I became an alcoholic, and I ended up going into AA through various circumstances, and like at that point, I wouldn't have ever called myself an atheist. I was too lazy to be an atheist, I think, but I definitely would have been an agnostic, and so that's why I call lapsed agnostic. But I kind of thought when I went into AA that I couldn't really get what the God thing was about, because they have this concept of God as we understand him, which is basically saying that, you need to have a higher power in your life, and whatever way you can imagine that, then that's fine, for the beginning anyway. And so I couldn't really get my head around this. How did this come into it? You know what I mean? I didn't really understand that, and it took me quite a while to grasp that actually this is about the structure of the human. And addiction, alcoholism, is about the structure of the human also. That actually, when you kind of latch onto one thing in reality, in human reality, you kind of do short-circuit your whole being. That we are born, we come in here, it seems, primed with a kind of an infinite desire, and desire for something infinite, something that can't be found, something, you can call it God if you want, or you can call it the moon if you want, or whatever, but it's something beyond ourselves. And in some way that defines us, that kind of, it kind of is like our where we get the power from, and if you think that's not true, or if you decide, well, I'm not going to live to that logic, then things start to go wrong and you short circuit. And that's where alcoholism and addictions of various kind come in. Because you actually essentially try to replace that remote source of your existence with something within yourself, which isn't possible. And so that's what I think addiction is, and alcoholism is. And then what you actually have to do in order to make yourself better is actually restore that remote source of your being and your power. And that's essentially, in a nutshell, what the program of Alcoholics Anonymous does. And actually that is what religion does and has done for, eons. And so I started to start rethinking all this stuff from there. And then it's, they say in AA, which I didn't really believe when I said it first, that, you will end up in the religion of origin, where you started, essentially. I said, yeah, right. But actually I did. For a while, and I'm not, I kind of come and go in my head from all that, from the Catholic thing, because I go through good, as I go through good and bad periods with it, it goes through bad and good periods of its own volition. And it's certainly going through a bad one now, so I'm kind of pulling a little bit back from it, but they're having good, rich periods. I think the period of Pope Benedict XVI was an extraordinarily rich period in the church, because he had such a profound grasp of the world and what's wrong with it, and how the problems of the world relate to the problem of that loss of God in the imagination of man. And so those are the kind of things that I'm interested in. Obviously there's a kind of an observance and a prayer element to all that as well. Obviously I'm not just, I do believe in someone I call God. But it's not, I'm not a holy Joe. I'm not interested in a kind of a recreational Christianity. There's a lot of that around, where people are trying to see it as an identity, as, there's a way of sort of exhibiting themselves in the world. This is me, and I believe in this, and I know all these prayers off by heart, and I believe in these prophecies, and I believe in these miracles, and so on and so forth. I'm not really like that. Everybody assumes because I talk about it that I am like that, and I'm going to be like them, and there's at least a lot of misunderstanding, and I try not to get into arguments with people about it. But to me, it's actually about the imagination. It's about the imagination of man, and I think that's, you actually look to the larger frame of society, of civilization, you see that it is religion, it is God that has enlarged the imagination of mankind to create massive civilizations which have been hugely successful in lots of ways. So I'm interested in all that, and that's kind of my main focus, although I do have a kind of, obviously I have a religious life myself. I do have a prayer life, and it's kind of whatever it is, But I'm not gospel greedy in that sense. I mean, I know I was steeped in the Gospels growing up because we were all the time in the church, and I know all the stories almost by heart. So that's kind of roughly where I am, and I come and go. You know, I mean, sometimes, I mean, I find it very hard to hang on because it's very hard to believe in God in the modern world, for reasons that Pope Benedict spoke about in an amazing speech he gave in the Bundestag in 2011, where he talked about man had been built a bunker to live in so he could shut out the mystery, shut out God. In other words, that he wanted a world that he could completely control and understand, and didn't need anything else to any other reference point, and that there was nothing mysterious to him. So I'm interested in all of these things, and I try to talk about these things. But unfortunately, you see, everything kind of, that when you speak about Catholicism, then people assume one thing, that you're an apologist for the church as it is, or that you kind of, you know, believe in mad stuff. I mean, I used to get all kinds of stuff asking me, oh, well, you know, well, on the one hand, there's evolution, and there's, on the other hand, you know, we're doing a project. I'm doing an essay about, you know, the two different forms of belief. I've been talking to people who believe in the evolution, and you obviously don't believe in that, so you believe in something else. Can you explain what you believe in? Like, and I say, well, I kind of do believe in evolution, but it's in a slightly different way. It's a bit more complicated than what these guys believe in. But it's not that I have any kind of, you know, they kind of think that you're, you know, a creationist means something other than being an evolutionist, but it actually doesn't, because you know, to think that it does would make God a very stupid person, you know, and so, you know, I'm kind of interested in all that stuff, but the level of discourse about this in public society now, or indeed anywhere, pretty much in the public realm, it's not all that interesting.